48 hours ago, they sold me for $2.1 million, half price. The discount? A barren womb, a scarred uterus, a biological dead end packaged in a 42-year-old body that had survived roadside bombs in Fallujah, but couldn't survive a routine medical procedure at 26. 72 hours later, I stood in a bathroom carved from black marble, staring at two pink lines on a plastic stick. Outside the window, Louisiana moss dripped from ancient oaks like funeral shrouds. Inside my body, a heartbeat that wasn't mine pulsed at 140 beats per minute. When my father's lawyer called 3 hours after that, voice dripping with barely concealed greed, I understood. This wasn't about money. This was war. And I had just become the most valuable weapon on the battlefield. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back. Back to the moment my father looked at me across his mahogany desk, the same desk where he'd once helped me with calculus homework, and said the words that would change everything. Isabeau, this is Vincent. He represents Lord Ashenmore. They're willing to clear my debts, all of them, 4.2 million, in exchange for you. The rain hammered against the windows of my father's study like accusations. Desmond Thorne sat behind that desk, 68 years old, looking 80. The gambling had carved canyons into his face. The fear had turned his hair to ash. 3 men in expensive suits. That's what I do. That's what I've always done. Iraq, Syria, the trauma centers of New Orleans. 18 years of surgical precision, of holding human brains in my hands and repairing what war and accident and fate had broken. And now my father was selling me like livestock. Dad, my voice came out flat, clinical, the same tone I used to inform families that the surgery had failed, that their loved one wouldn't wake up. What are you talking about? Desmond couldn't meet my eyes. He never could. Not since Mom died. Not since he married Vivian 3 months after the funeral. Not since Clarissa was born, and suddenly I became the obstacle instead of the daughter. It's not what you think. His fingers trembled as he poured bourbon. 10 in the morning. The glass was already his third. I could smell it from across the room. It's a contract. A marriage contract. The Ashenmores are royalty, Isabeau. Old money. Older than you can imagine. One of the suited men stepped forward. Tall, impossibly pale, eyes like chips of Arctic ice. When he spoke, his accent carried the weight of centuries. British, but older. Something from before Britain even had that name. Dr. Thorne, I am Vincent, steward to Lord Constantine Ashenmore. Your father has accumulated significant debt, $4.2 million. The creditors are not patient men, they are not legal men. Do you understand what I'm saying? I understood. The mafia. The kind of people who made examples, who sent messages written in broken bones and shallow graves. There is a solution, Vincent continued. Lord Ashenmore requires a companion, someone of intelligence, of strength, of verified medical expertise. Your father has provided documentation of your surgical credentials. Quite impressive. Johns Hopkins, Harvard Medical, combat medicine in Iraq. 237 successful neurosurgeries with a 94% survival rate. He knew my record better than most hospital administrators. Because of this limitation, Vincent said, Lord Ashenmore is willing to adjust the terms. The standard contract for a fertile bride is 4.2 million. For you, he offers 2.1 million, exactly half. It clears your father's debt, partially. Partially? I looked at Desmond. What about the other half? My father's face crumpled. Vivian stepped out from behind the leather wingback chair. 45 years old, beautiful in that carefully maintained way that required personal trainers and cosmetic dermatologists and weekly salon appointments. She wore white, always white, like she was trying to convince the world of her purity. The other half, Vivian said, her voice sugar-coated arsenic, will be managed through the sale of the house, your inheritance, what little there is. Clarissa and I have already made arrangements. Clarissa, my half-sister, 38 years old, 4 years younger than me. She emerged from the hallway, phone in hand, filming, always filming, building her social media empire on the ruins of other people's dignity. Isabeau, she smiled, Perfect teeth, veneers. This is actually a good opportunity for you. Lord Ashenmore is incredibly wealthy. You'll live in a mansion, have servants. And let's be honest, it's not like you were going to get married anyway. Not at 42, not with your condition. My condition. As if infertility was a disease. As if my value as a human being was measured in my ability to reproduce. I looked at my father. Really looked at him. Searching for the man who had taught me to ride a bike, who had cried at my medical school graduation, who had told me I could be anything I wanted to be. He was gone, drowned in bourbon and regret and the suffocating grip of Vivian's manipulation. "And if I refuse?" I asked. Vincent's expression didn't change. "Well, then your father's creditors will come tonight. They will start with his fingers, then his knees, then they will move on to his family, all of his family. I believe the term they used was complete liquidation of assets." Vivian gasped, clutched her pearls, actual pearls. The performance was almost impressive. "You have 1 hour to decide," Vincent said. He placed a contract on the desk. 20 pages. Legal language dense enough to require translation. "Lord Ashenmore does not make this offer lightly. He does not make it twice. 1 hour, Dr. Thorne." They left. All of them. Even Clarissa, though she lingered at the door, phone still recording, waiting for me to break down. To cry. To give her content for her followers. I didn't. I sat in the chair across from my father and read the contract. Every word, every clause, every subsection. It wasn't a marriage contract. It was ownership. I would live at Ashenmore Manor. I would serve as companion to Lord Constantine Ashenmore. I would have no legal rights to his estate, no claim to his wealth beyond room and board. I would be, in every meaningful sense, property. In exchange, my father's debt would be partially cleared. He would live. Vivian would keep her lifestyle. Clarissa would inherit whatever scraps remained. And I would disappear into the Louisiana bayou, into a world I didn't understand, with a man whose very existence suggested that reality was far stranger than my medical training had prepared me for. "Dad!" I looked up. He was staring at his hands. "Do you know what Lord Ashenmore is?" "Rich," Desmond whispered. "Very rich." "No," I leaned forward. "Vincent's skin. Did you see it? The way it doesn't quite sit right. The way his eyes don't blink often enough. The way he moved. Too smooth. Too controlled." Desmond's face went grey. "They're vampires, Dad. You're selling me to vampires." He didn't deny it. Couldn't deny it. The truth sat between us like a third person at the table. "I didn't have a choice," he said finally. "They would have killed me." "You always have a choice." I stood, picked up the contract. "You just chose yourself." I signed it. Right there, in front of him. Watched his relief war with his shame. Watched him reach for the bourbon bottle with shaking hands. "Isabeau, Don't." I folded the contract, tucked it into my jacket. "I'm doing this because those men will kill you if I don't. Not because you deserve it. Not because you earned it. Because Mom would have wanted me to. Because somewhere, buried under all that weakness and cowardice, there might still be a shred of the father I used to know." I walked out. Didn't say goodbye to Vivian. Didn't acknowledge Clarissa's camera. Went to my apartment, packed a single duffel bag. Scrubs, jeans, the photo of Mom. The field surgery kit from Iraq. The watch my grandfather gave me before he died. Everything that mattered fit in one bag. Everything else was just weight. Vincent picked me up at midnight, black car. Driver with the same too pale skin and too still eyes. We drove south. Into the bayou, where the road turned from asphalt to gravel to dirt, where the GPS signal died and the cell towers disappeared, and the only light came from the occasional flash of fireflies in the darkness. 4 hours. That's how long it took to leave the world I knew and enter the world I was sold into. Ashenmore Manor rose from the swamp like a monument to forgotten centuries. Stone walls, iron gates, towers that clawed at the moonless sky. Gargoyles that might have been decorative, or might have been something else entirely, frozen mid-flight. The gates opened without anyone touching them. The car rolled up a gravel drive lined with oaks so old they remembered when this land belonged to France, to Spain, to tribes whose names had been erased from history books. Vincent opened my door. The air hit me like a physical thing, humid, heavy, smelling of magnolia and decay and something else, something copper, something like blood. "Lord Ashenmore is waiting in the East Wing," Vincent said. "He prefers to meet new arrivals immediately." Arrivals, not guests, not employees, arrivals. I followed him through doors that weighed more than cars, through hallways lined with paintings of men in military uniforms from wars I only recognized from history textbooks. Napoleonic, revolutionary, medieval. Further back, so far back the armor looked like something from museum exhibits. The East Wing was a library, 3 stories of books, leather-bound, handwritten, languages I didn't recognize, a fireplace large enough to roast a whole pig, and standing in front of it, backlit by flames, was Lord Constantine Ashenmore. He was tall, 6'3", maybe 6'4", broad-shouldered in a way that suggested combat training, not gym memberships. His hair was dark, shot through with silver that might have been premature, or might have been 680 years in the making. His face was sharp, aristocratic, the kind of face that belonged on coins from empires that no longer existed. But it was his eyes that stopped me. Not red, not the glowing crimson of horror movies, just dark, impossibly dark, like looking into wells that had no bottom. "Dr. Thorne." His voice carried the weight of centuries, British accent, but underneath it, something older. Latin? Greek? Something from before English existed. "Thank you for coming." I didn't have much choice. I set my bag down, kept my posture straight, military bearing from my Iraq days. Never show fear, never show weakness. Your man made that clear. A flicker of something crossed his face. Amusement? Respect? Vincent can be direct. Constantine moved away from the fire. His movement was wrong, too fluid, too controlled, like watching a predator pretend to be human. "But I want to be clear about something, Dr. Thorne. I did not buy you to clean my floors or warm my bed. I have servants for the former and no interest in the latter." He gestured to a chair. Leather, old, comfortable. "I bought you because I need a surgeon, someone with combat experience, someone who can think under pressure and operate under conditions that would make most physicians faint, someone who won't run screaming when confronted with biology that doesn't appear in medical textbooks." I sat, slowly. "You're sick." "No." He poured 2 glasses of something amber, offered me one. I took it. Bourbon. Good bourbon. The kind that costs more than my car. "My son is sick. His name is Alaric. He is 180 years old. And he is dying." I sipped the bourbon, let it burn. "I'm a neurosurgeon, not an immortal disease specialist. His disease is neurological." Constantine sat across from me. The firelight played across his face, making shadows dance in the hollows of his cheeks. "Blood rot, a condition that affects vampires who have been exposed to silver over extended periods. It attacks the central nervous system, causes degradation of motor control, seizures, eventually total paralysis, then death." "Silver poisoning." I set down the glass. "I've read about heavy metal toxicity in humans, lead, mercury, but silver? Our physiology is different." Constantine's hand moved to a scar on his neck. "Old, very old. What is harmless to humans can be lethal to us. Alaric has been deteriorating for 8 years. I have consulted with every vampire physician in existence, 17 in total. None can help him. None can even slow the progression." He leaned forward. For the first time I saw it. The desperation, the fear, the same expression I'd seen on the faces of parents in hospital waiting rooms, clinging to hope that was already dead. "But you're not a vampire physician, Dr. Thorne. You're a human neurosurgeon. You think differently. You trained in war zones. You've performed surgeries in bombed-out buildings with improvised tools and no backup. You saved 237 lives in conditions that should have killed them. You did your research. I do not make investments blindly." He stood, walked to a desk, returned with a file. Medical scans, MRI images. But the anatomy was wrong. The structures didn't match human neurology. These are Alaric's scans. I need you to study them, to find the silver deposits, to develop a surgical approach to extract them. I need you to save my son, Dr. Thorne. I took the file, opened it. The images were fascinating, terrifying, beautiful in their alienness. The vampire brain was larger than human, more complex. Areas that corresponded to enhanced senses, processing speeds that would make supercomputers jealous. And scattered throughout, like stars in a night sky, were bright spots. Silver, embedded in tissue that was already damaged, degenerating. This is a suicide mission, I said quietly. One wrong cut and he's dead. Or worse, permanent vegetative state, locked-in syndrome. I could turn him into a conscious corpse. Yes. Constantine's honesty was brutal. You could, but if you do nothing, he dies anyway. In 6 months, maybe less. I have watched him fade for 8 years. I have held his hand through seizures that lasted hours. I have listened to him beg me to end his suffering, to put him out of his misery like a wounded animal. His voice cracked, just barely, just enough to reveal the father beneath the lord, beneath the vampire, beneath the 680 years of accumulated power and control. I cannot lose my son, Dr. Thorne. I will not. Whatever it takes, whatever it costs, I will pay. I looked at the scans again, at the impossible anatomy, at the challenge that would make medical history if I succeeded. That would end my career in anonymous failure if I didn't. But underneath the professional calculation, something else stirred. Recognition. Because I knew that look, that desperation. I'd worn it myself 16 years ago, staring at my own medical reports, at the words that had ended my dreams of family, of legacy, of anything beyond my career. Barren, broken, defective. There's something else, I said, something Vincent mentioned, about my condition. Constantine nodded, returned to his chair. Yes, I am aware of your medical history, the surgical accident at 26, the resulting infertility. Dr. Marlowe's report was quite thorough. And that doesn't bother you? That I can't give you heirs? I thought that was the whole point of buying brides. I bought a surgeon, Dr. Thorne, not a brood mare. His expression was impossible to read. However, there is something you should know. About vampire physiology, about our blood. He pulled out a knife, silver, small, a letter opener. Drew it across his palm. Black blood welled up, gleaming in the firelight like oil. Our blood heals, regenerates tissue, repairs damage that should be irreparable. It is why we live for centuries, why we recover from wounds that would kill humans, why we are so difficult to destroy permanently. He held out his hand. The cut was already closing, skin knitting together, flesh reforming. In 30 seconds, there was no scar, no evidence the wound had ever existed. I have no interest in forcing you into anything, Dr. Thorne, but I want you to understand the full scope of what's possible. If you agree to help Alaric, if you succeed in saving him, I can offer you something in return. Money? I asked. Freedom? Both, and more. He met my eyes. My blood could heal you, repair the damage to your uterus, restore what was taken from you 16 years ago. You could have children, Dr. Thorne. You could have the family you thought was impossible. The room went silent. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called, a sound like mourning. There's a catch, I said. There's always a catch. There is. Constantine's expression was grave. The healing process requires bonding, an exchange of blood over several nights. It is intimate, it is intense, and it comes with risks. You could reject the transformation. You could develop complications. You could die. Or you could be whole again. I stood, walked to the window. Outside, the bayou stretched into darkness, endless, unknowable, full of things that moved in the shadows, things that shouldn't exist, but did. Behind me, Constantine waited, patient as stone, patient as time itself. I thought about my father, about Vivian's smile, about Clarissa's camera, about 16 years of feeling broken, of watching my colleagues bring baby photos to the hospital, of going home to an empty apartment and an empty future. I thought about Mom, about her last words before the cancer took her, before Vivian swooped in like a vulture. "Be brave, Isabeau. Be more than they expect." I turned around. "3 conditions," I said. "First, I study Alaric's case for as long as I need. No rush, no pressure. I operate when I'm ready, or not at all. Second, regardless of whether I succeed, my father's debt is cleared. All of it, 4.2 million. Third, if I agree to this healing ritual, if I let you try to fix me, and it works, and I do get pregnant, that child is mine. Not yours, not a bargaining chip, not an heir to your empire. Mine." Constantine smiled. It was the first time I'd seen him smile. It changed his face entirely, made him look almost human. "Agreed, all 3 conditions. You have my word." "The word of a vampire!" I crossed my arms. "Forgive me if I want that in writing." "Smart." He extended his hand. "I like you, Dr. Thorne. I think we're going to work well together." I shook it. His grip was frigid, inhumanly strong, but careful, controlled. He could have crushed my hand. He didn't. "Show me to Alaric," I said. "Let's see what we're working with." The next 3 weeks were a blur of medical texts and vampire biology and late-night consultations with Alaric himself. He was young by vampire standards, 180 years old. Born in the 1840s, fought in the American Civil War, watched the world change from horses to rockets, from candlelight to smartphones. And now he was dying, slowly, painfully, losing control of his limbs, his speech, his ability to feed, to exist. But he was brilliant, sharp, funny in a dark, sardonic way that reminded me of the combat medics I'd served with in Iraq, men and women who laughed at death because the alternative was screaming. "You know," he said one night, "most people run when they find out what we are. You haven't even flinched." I was studying his latest scans, marking the silver deposits, calculating approach vectors. "I've seen worse in Fallujah. At least you don't explode when I make a mistake." He laughed. It turned into a cough, into a seizure that lasted 90 seconds. I held him through it, checked his vitals, made notes. "My father likes you," Alaric said when he could speak again. "That's rare. He doesn't trust humans, not after everything he's lived through, everything he's lost." "What has he lost?" "Everyone." Alaric's eyes were sad, old, too old for his youthful face. "His human family, his vampire siblings, 3 wives, 2 sons before me, countless friends." 680 years is a long time to watch people die, Dr. Thorne. It makes you careful, makes you cold, makes you stop hoping that this time, maybe this time, you'll get to keep something. I thought about that, about loving someone for nearly 7 centuries, about losing them over and over, about the courage it took to keep trying, to keep hoping. "He's not cold," I said. "He's terrified. There's a difference." Alaric smiled. "You see him. Most people just see the monster." 3 weeks became 4. 4 became 5. I developed a surgical plan, refined it, practiced on cadavers that Vincent provided. Don't ask where he got them. I didn't. And every night, Constantine would find me in the library, would sit across from me, would talk, not about the surgery, not about Alaric, just talk, about history, about art, about the wars he'd fought, the empires he'd watched rise and fall. He asked about Iraq, about what I'd seen, what I'd done. I told him things I'd never told my therapist. About the soldier who'd died in my hands because I couldn't stop the bleeding. About the child I'd saved only to learn she'd stepped on a mine 2 days later. About the weight of all those lives and deaths and the impossible mathematics of triage. He listened, really listened. Didn't offer empty platitudes or false comfort, just listened. "You carry your dead," he said one night. "I recognize the weight. I carry mine too. 680 years worth. Sometimes I think they weigh more than I do." On the 6th week, I told him I was ready to operate, ready to try to save Alaric, and ready to accept his offer. The healing, the restoration, the chance to be whole. "Are you certain?" Constantine asked. We were in his study, midnight, rain hammering against the windows like judgment. Once we begin, there's no going back. The bonding is permanent. It changes you, not into a vampire, but into something between, something new. I've been broken for 16 years, I said. I'm willing to risk becoming something new if it means I might also become something whole. He nodded, stood, offered his hand. 3 nights, he said, starting tonight. By the 3rd night, we'll know. The transformation will either take or it won't. Your body will either accept my blood or reject it. There will be pain, significant pain. Are you prepared for that? I thought about the IED that had gone off 3 feet from me in Fallujah, about the concussion, the shrapnel, the ringing in my ears that lasted for months. I've had worse. His smile was gentle, almost fond. You're remarkable, Dr. Thorne. I hope you know that. He led me to his private chambers, a tower room, windows overlooking the bayou, a bed that looked like it belonged in a museum, 4-poster, carved wood, silk sheets the color of blood. This was it, the moment of decision, the point of no return. I thought about my father signing those papers, about Vivian's smile, about Clarissa's camera, about all the ways I'd been broken and discarded and told I was less than. And I thought about Mom, about her bravery, about the way she'd faced cancer with her chin up and her spine straight. Be more than they expect. I began unbuttoning my shirt. Constantine stopped me, his hand on mine, cold, gentle. This isn't about sex, Isabeau. It's about blood, about transformation. I need you to understand that. I understand. I met his eyes, those impossibly dark eyes. I'm a surgeon. I understand anatomy. I understand biology. I understand consent. I'm giving it, freely. Now let's do this before I change my mind. The first night was fire. His blood in my veins, his teeth in my throat. Not painful, not exactly. More like every nerve ending in my body being rewired, being rebuilt, being burned down and reconstructed from ash. I could feel it working, feel his blood seeking out the damage in my uterus, the scar tissue, the dead zones, feel it breaking down the barriers and rebuilding bridges. He held me through it, his body cold against my fevered heat, his voice low and steady in my ear. Breathe. Stay with me. Let it work. The second night was worse. The pain intensified. My body fighting itself, fighting the transformation, rejecting the foreign biology. I screamed, actually screamed, something I hadn't done since Fallujah. Constantine didn't let go, didn't leave, just held me tighter. You're strong enough, he whispered. I've lived 680 years. I've known thousands of humans. You're strong enough. Trust me. The third night was silence. The pain faded, replaced by a sensation of wholeness, of completion, like puzzle pieces finally clicking into place. I woke up in his arms, dawn light filtering through the windows, my skin glowing, the constant ache in my lower back, a remnant of the accident, gone, everything sharper, clearer, more alive. Constantine was watching me, his expression unreadable. How do you feel? He asked. I sat up, touched my stomach, felt something there, something new, something possible. Different, I whispered. Complete. He smiled. It worked. I can smell the change in your blood. Your body accepted the transformation. You're healed, Isabeau. I should have cried, should have laughed, should have felt joy. Instead, I felt numb, overwhelmed, like standing on the edge of a cliff and realizing you'd just been given wings but had no idea how to use them. 2 weeks later, I was in the bathroom, black marble, gold fixtures, luxury I still wasn't used to, staring at a pregnancy test. 2 pink lines. Impossible, miraculous, terrifying. I walked out, found Constantine in his study, showed him the test. He fell to his knees. Actually fell. This 680-year-old vampire lord, this warrior who had fought in Napoleonic wars and survived plagues and conquered empires, fell to his knees in front of me. Isabeau, he breathed. You did it. We did it, I corrected. He looked up, his eyes shining with something that might have been tears, Might have been blood, might have been both. I thought I was done hoping, he said. I thought I'd lost the ability centuries ago. But you made me hope again. He pressed his forehead against my stomach. His shoulders shook. I ran my fingers through his hair. This creature who was supposed to be a monster, who was instead the most human person I'd met in years. For 24 hours, we were happy, deliriously happy, making plans, discussing names, laughing about nursery designs. And then Vincent knocked on the door, his face grave. "My lord," he said, "we have a problem. The Thorne family has learned of the pregnancy. Doctor." Marlowe disclosed the test results from the clinic visit last week. They are en route, with lawyers and the press. Constantine stood, his expression shifting from joy to ice in seconds. "What do they want?" "Everything," Vincent said. "They claim fraud. They claim that since Dr. Thorne is pregnant, she was clearly not infertile as represented. They want her returned. They want the remaining 2.1 million, and they want custody of the child." I felt the world tilt, felt the happiness drain out of me like blood from a wound. "They sold me," I whispered. "They sold me, and now they want me back?" Constantine's hand found mine, gripped it. His touch was frigid, his rage was volcanic. "Let them come," he said quietly. "Let them come and learn what it means to declare war on Ashenmoor." Outside, the storm that had been threatening all evening finally broke. Lightning split the sky. Thunder shook the foundations of the manor. And somewhere in the distance, I heard cars, multiple cars, coming up the drive, coming for me, coming for my child. The war had begun. The convoy arrived at 2 in the morning. 5 vehicles, 3 black SUVs with tinted windows, a news van with Channel 7 logos emblazoned on the side, and a silver Mercedes that I recognized, my father's car, the one Vivian had insisted he buy 3 years ago, the one that cost more than most people's houses. I watched from the tower window. Constantine stood beside me, his hand resting on the small of my back. Below, Vincent was already moving, organizing security. The pale figures that emerged from the shadows weren't human, weren't servants. They were vampire guards, 20 of them, silent, deadly, waiting. "They brought cameras," I said. My voice sounded hollow, distant, like it belonged to someone else. "They're going to make this a spectacle." "Good." Constantine's jaw was set. His eyes had darkened to pure black. No iris. No white. Just void. "Let them document their own destruction. Let them record the moment they learned what it means to threaten an Ashenmoor." The car doors opened. My father stepped out first. He dressed for the occasion. Expensive suit, silk tie. The costume of a man who had money, instead of the reality of a man drowning in debt and bourbon. Behind him, Vivian emerged. White dress, pearls, hair perfectly coiffed, despite the 2-hour drive through a storm. And then, Clarissa, phone already out, already filming, narrating for her followers. I could almost hear her voice. "Breaking news, guys. We're at the vampire mansion to rescue my sister from her kidnapper." 3 lawyers followed, sharks in suits, the kind that charged $1,000 an hour and had ethics as flexible as their billable hours. And finally, the reporters. 2 of them, cameras, microphones, hungry for a story that would make their careers. Vincent met them at the gate. The iron bars stayed closed. I couldn't hear the conversation from this distance, but I could read the body language. Vincent's posture, immovable, unyielding. My father's gestures growing increasingly agitated. "They're demanding to see you," Constantine said. He could hear them. Vampire senses. They're threatening legal action. They're threatening to call the police. They're making threats they can't possibly enforce, but don't realize it yet. "What do you want to do?" I asked. He looked at me. Really looked at me. His expression softening. "What do you want to do, Isabeau? This is your fight, your family, your choice. I will support whatever decision you make. If you want to hide, we hide. If you want to face them, we face them. If you want to burn their world down around them, I'll hand you the matches." I thought about that, about the choices I'd made in my life, about Iraq, about standing in operating rooms with bullets flying overhead, about making decisions in seconds that determined who lived and who died. This was just another battlefield, just another set of impossible choices. We face them, I said, but not tonight. Tonight, we gather evidence. Tonight, we find out why they really came. Because this isn't about love. It isn't about family. There's something else, something we're missing. Constantine smiled. It was a predator's smile, all teeth and promise. Vincent, he said, his voice carrying effortlessly across the grounds, inform the Thorne family that Dr. Isabeau will meet with them tomorrow evening, 6 o'clock, in the formal parlour. They may bring their lawyers. They may not bring their cameras. And they may not, under any circumstances, set foot on Ashenmore grounds without explicit permission. Those who violate this rule will be removed, permanently. The last word hung in the air like a threat, like a promise. Below, I watched my father's face go white, watched Vivian clutch her pearls tighter, watched the lawyers huddle and whisper. Only Clarissa seemed unfazed, still filming, still performing for an audience that had no idea what they were really watching. The convoy eventually left, frustrated, angry, but they left. And then the real work began. Constantine's study at 4 in the morning. Coffee for me. Blood for him. Medical records spread across an oak table that had probably hosted Napoleon himself at some point in its 680-year history. Tell me about the accident, Constantine said. The one that supposedly left you infertile. Every detail you remember. I wrapped my hands around the coffee mug, let the heat seep into my palms. I was 26, third year of my surgical residency at Johns Hopkins. I'd been having abdominal pain for weeks, sharp, stabbing, the kind that wakes you up at 3 in the morning. I kept ignoring it, kept pushing through. Residency is hell. You don't take time off. You don't show weakness. What happened? I collapsed in the OR, middle of an appendectomy, just dropped. They rushed me to surgery, emergency exploratory. Dr. Octavia Marlowe was the attending. She found massive ovarian cysts, said they'd ruptured, said there was severe damage to my fallopian tubes and uterine lining. She performed a partial hysterectomy, removed one ovary, repaired what she could. I paused, sipped the coffee. It was exceptional, the kind of coffee that cost more per pound than most people spent on groceries. When I woke up, she told me the damage was irreparable, that I'd never carry a child to term, that my uterus was too scarred, too compromised. She showed me the scans, showed me the surgical photos. It all looked legitimate. Constantine pulled up a file on his laptop. These are your medical records from that surgery. Vincent acquired them this afternoon. Look at the dates. I leaned forward, scanned the documents. Something was wrong. The timeline didn't match my memory. The cysts, I said slowly. According to this, they weren't ruptured. They were intact, small, the kind that usually resolve on their own. No emergency, no massive damage, just routine cysts that 90% of women develop at some point. Keep reading? I did, and felt ice forming in my stomach. She removed my ovary anyway, performed the partial hysterectomy anyway, created the scarring. On purpose. This wasn't an emergency surgery. This was elective. This was deliberate mutilation. Constantine nodded. And look at the authorization forms. Who signed for the procedure? I found the signature. Neat, precise, familiar. Vivian Thorne, power of attorney, signed 3 days before my collapse. I don't understand. But even as I said it, I did. I understood perfectly. She planned this. She knew I'd collapse. She knew because she caused it. The abdominal pain, Constantine said quietly. When did it start? 3 months after she married my father, right after Clarissa was born. I thought it was stress, thought it was the residency, thought it was grief over losing Mom. I never suspected. Poison. Constantine pulled up another file. Chemical formulas, medical analyses. Low-dose arsenic, administered over weeks, causes abdominal cramping, nausea, weakness, easily mistaken for stress or illness, eventually causes organ damage, creates cysts, creates inflammation, creates the perfect excuse for emergency surgery. I stood up, walked to the window. The sun was rising, pale light filtering through Spanish moss. Beautiful. The kind of morning that should have felt peaceful. Instead, I felt like I was being dissected, like someone had opened my chest and started cataloguing my organs. "Why?" my voice cracked. "Why would she do this to me?" "Money." Vincent's voice came from the doorway. He entered carrying more files, more evidence. "Your mother, Marguerite Thorne, was wealthy, very wealthy. Old family money. When she married your father, she kept her assets separate. Smart woman. She had a trust fund, $20 million, set to be divided equally between you and any future children your father might have. So when Clarissa was born, the pot would have been split. 10 million to you, 10 million to Clarissa. But there was a clause. If you were deemed incapable of producing heirs, if you were infertile, your share would revert to the estate, would be distributed to other beneficiaries. To Clarissa. Yes, but only if Vivian could prove you were permanently, irreversibly infertile. A partial hysterectomy, scarring so severe no treatment could fix it, medical documentation from a trusted physician. Doctor. Octavia Marlowe, who coincidentally was Vivian's sorority sister from college. The pieces fell into place, each one sharp, each one cutting. How much did she pay Octavia? Vincent consulted his notes. $4,000 a month, for 16 years. $768,000 total, paid through a shell company, nearly untraceable. Nearly? We're vampires, Dr. Thorne. We've had centuries to perfect the art of investigation. Octavia kept records. Meticulous records. We found them yesterday in a safety deposit box at First National, along with something else. Something much worse. He laid out a new file. Hospital records from 16 years ago. Not mine, my mother's. Marguerite Thorne. Admitted August 15th. Age 44. Cause of death, cardiac arrest secondary to acute arsenic poisoning. I stopped breathing. No. My hands shook. No. Mom died of cancer. Ovarian cancer. She was diagnosed 6 months before she died. I was there. I held her hand through the chemo, through the radiation. I watched her waste away. You watched her be poisoned, Constantine said gently. He stood, moved to my side. His hand found mine, cold, steady. Vivian didn't give her cancer. She gave her arsenic, slow doses, over months. Symptoms mimicking cancer, nausea, weight loss, organ failure. By the time the real diagnosis came, your mother was already dying. The cancer was just a convenient cover story. Doctor. Marlowe signed the death certificate. Vincent added. Listed cause of death as complications from ovarian cancer. No autopsy, no investigation. Your father was too grief-stricken to question it, and Vivian played the supportive new wife, caring for him, helping him through his loss, marrying him 3 months later. I pulled away from Constantine, walked to the other side of the room. I needed space, needed air, needed something solid to hold on to because the world was tilting and I couldn't find my balance. She killed my mother. The words felt foreign in my mouth, too big, too terrible. She killed my mother, and then she mutilated me, and she did it for money. Yes, Constantine said. And my father? Did he know? Was he part of this? Vincent hesitated. We don't believe so. Your father is weak, easily manipulated, drowning in gambling debts and bourbon, but we found no evidence he knew about the murders, about the poisoning. He's a fool, Dr. Thorne, not a monster. Small comfort. My father was a coward who sold me to clear his debts. Whether he knew about Vivian's crimes or not, he'd still chosen bourbon and betting slips over his daughter. There's more, Vincent said. His expression was grim. The lawsuit, the timing, it's not coincidental. What do you mean? Constantine moved to his desk, pulled up emails, financial records. Silas Grimwood, my financial advisor for 280 years. I trusted him with everything, my investments, my holdings, my estate planning. 3 days ago, he came to me with a proposal. He suggested I contest the bonding, suggested I declare you an unsuitable mate, suggested I void the contract and sell you back to your father. Why would he do that? Because he's been working with Vivian for 15 years. Constantine's voice was glacial. He's been blackmailing her, threatening to expose the poisonings, the murder, everything, in exchange for monthly payments, $50,000 a month, $9 million total. But if I'm pregnant, if I produce an heir, Silas loses his inheritance claim. I saw it now, the whole picture. Your estate, if you die without legitimate heirs, who inherits? My advisors, my inner circle. Silas would receive 40%, $800 million. But if I have a child, a legitimate heir, that provision is void. Silas gets his salary, his pension, nothing more. So he worked with my father, convinced him to sell me at a discount, betting that the infertility was real, that I'd fail to produce an heir, that you'd eventually give up, grow depressed, maybe even choose to end it. Suicide isn't uncommon among vampires, Constantine said quietly. 680 years is a long time to carry grief. Many of my kind eventually choose the sun, choose the stake, choose oblivion over endless existence. But I got pregnant. I ruined the plan, so now they need me back, need to prove fraud, need to void the contract and reset the board. Exactly. Vincent pulled up more files. And there's one more thing, Alaric's condition, the silver poisoning. We always assumed it was accidental exposure, old wounds, contaminated blood. But look at these medical records. The progression, it's too consistent, too measured. This isn't natural deterioration. This is deliberate, sustained poisoning. Constantine went very still, dangerously still. Silas, he breathed. Silas administers Alaric's medications. Silas oversees his care. Silas has been poisoning my son for 8 years, keeping him sick enough to distract me, to make me desperate, to make me vulnerable. He turned. His face was no longer human. No pretense of humanity remained. His eyes were pure black. His fangs extended. His presence filled the room like a physical force. I'm going to kill him. His voice was death itself. I'm going to rip his heart from his chest and feed it to him while he watches. No. I stepped between him and the door. You're not. Because if you kill him now, we lose all leverage. We lose the evidence. We lose the ability to expose them publicly, to destroy them completely. Isabeau, his control was fracturing. 680 years of composure cracking. He poisoned my son. He's been killing Alaric for 8 years, making him suffer, making me watch, all for money. I know. I put my hands on his chest, felt the absence of a heartbeat, felt the cold rage vibrating through him. I know, and we're going to make him pay. But we're going to do it right. We're going to do it in a way that destroys him completely. Legacy, reputation, freedom, everything. He looked down at me, at my hands on his chest, at the certainty in my eyes. Slowly, carefully, he pulled back, reasserted control. The black receded from his eyes, the fangs retracted. The monster disappeared behind the mask of the man. What do you propose? First, I said, we save Alaric. We remove the silver. We prove that your son can be healed. Then we gather all the evidence, every email, every bank transfer, every piece of documentation. We build a case so airtight that even the best lawyers in the world can't break it. And then, when they come for their meeting tomorrow night, we give them exactly what they want. Which is a public confrontation, cameras, witnesses, a stage for their performance, and we make sure it's the last performance they ever give. Before the surgery, I needed rest, needed to recover from the transformation. My body was still adjusting to the vampire blood coursing through my veins, the heightened senses, the increased strength, the strange sensation of being between human and something else. 2 weeks. That's what Konstantin insisted on. 2 weeks of rest and nutrition and preparation before I attempted an 11-hour neurosurgery on tissue I'd only studied in theory. I spent those weeks in the medical wing, reading, practicing, preparing, and getting to know Alaric better. "Tell me about your worst day," I said one afternoon. We were in his room, sunlight filtered through UV-protected glass. He sat in the wheelchair now. The seizures had robbed him of the ability to walk. Worst day? He thought about it. Gettysburg, July 3rd, 1863. Pickett's charge. 15,000 men marching across an open field into certain death. I watched friends cut down by artillery, by rifle fire. The screams, the blood. We lost 7,000 men in an hour. You were there? I was human then, 22 years old, scared. So scared I could barely hold my rifle. But I marched anyway. Because that's what soldiers do. We march toward death, because the alternative is cowardice. I made notes on his current neurological status, reflexes, cognitive function, memory. When did you turn? 6 months later. I was dying, infection from a bayonet wound. Konstantin found me in a field hospital, offered me a choice, death or transformation. I chose life, chose 680 years of watching the world change while I stayed the same. Do you regret it? Every day. And not at all. He smiled. It's complicated. Being immortal. You get to see wonders. Airplanes, computers, the moon landing. But you also watch everyone you love die. Every single one. Until you're alone with your memories and your father and the knowledge that it will never end. Unless the silver wins. Unless the silver wins. I closed the chart. I'm going to make sure it doesn't. The surgery took 11 hours. Alaric lay on the table in what had once been a ballroom and was now a sterile surgical suite. Vincent had converted it in 48 hours. Hospital-grade equipment, monitoring systems, backup generators, everything I'd requested and more. Konstantin stood by the door. He'd wanted to be in the room, wanted to watch. I'd forbidden it. You're too close to this, I'd told him. If something goes wrong, if I need to make a hard call, I can't have you second-guessing me. You wait outside. You trust me, or we don't do this at all. He'd agreed, reluctantly, but he'd agreed. Now it was just me, Alaric, and 3 vampire nurses who served as surgical assistants. They were old, experienced. They'd seen things that would make modern physicians faint. Talk to me, I said to Alaric. We decided to do this without general anesthesia. Vampire physiology made it risky, unpredictable. Instead, I'd numbed the surgical site, kept him conscious, kept him talking. About what? His voice was weak, slurred from the seizures that had racked him all morning. Anything. Tell me about the Civil War. Tell me what it was like to fight at Antietam. September 17th, 1862. Bloodiest single day in American history. 23,000 casualties. I was 22 years old, human still, scared beyond reason. I made the first incision, a careful line across his scalp, peeling back skin, exposing bone. What were you scared of? Dying, obviously, but more than that. I was scared of killing, of what it would do to me, who it would make me become. I picked up the cranial saw, modern equipment, diamond-tipped blade. It would cut through vampire bone, barely. Did you kill anyone that day? 17 men, I counted. I remember every face, every scream, every moment. Even now, 162 years later, I remember. The saw bit into bone, high-pitched whine, the smell of burning calcium. One of the nurses suctioned blood. Another monitored vitals. Do you regret it? Every day. But I'd do it again, because the alternative was worse. The alternative was letting evil win. Sometimes you have to become a monster to fight monsters. You understand that, don't you? From Iraq. I did. I understood perfectly. 6 hours of microsurgery, of following neural pathways, of extracting foreign metal from living tissue, of repairing damage that had accumulated over 8 years of systematic poisoning. Alaric talked through it all, about wars, about women he'd loved, about watching his human family age and die while he stayed frozen at 22, about the loneliness of immortality. And I listened, used his voice as a guide. As long as he could talk coherently, I knew I hadn't damaged the language centers, hadn't caused irreversible harm. By hour 9, my hands were cramping, my eyes burning, but I kept going, because this was what I did. This was who I was, a surgeon, a healer, someone who fought death with a scalpel and stubborn determination. By hour 11, the last piece of silver was out, sitting in a tray, a collection of gleaming death extracted from living tissue. "We're done," I said, my voice hoarse. "I need to close now, need to put you back together." "Isabeau." Alaric's eyes met mine, lucid, clear, more clear than I'd seen in weeks. "Thank you for giving me my life back. Thank your father, he's the one who found me." "No," a smile, weak but genuine. "He found a surgeon. You chose to be a miracle worker. There's a difference." I closed the incision, replaced the bone flap, sealed the scalp. My hands moved on autopilot, muscle memory from thousands of surgeries. When I finally stepped back, Vincent was waiting with a chair. I collapsed into it, exhausted, triumphant, terrified that the relief was premature. "Will he recover?" Vincent asked. "Yes." I stripped off my gloves. "The silver is out, the tissue is healing. His brain is already compensating, rerouting, repairing. Give him 3 days and he'll be better than he's been in years." The door opened. Constantine entered. His eyes went immediately to Alaric, to his son lying on the table, chest rising and falling, alive. He crossed the room in 3 strides, fell to his knees beside the table, took Alaric's hand. "Father." Alaric's voice was stronger, clearer. "I can feel my fingers. I can feel my toes." It worked. Constantine pressed his forehead against his son's hand. His shoulders shook. No sound, just silent, overwhelming grief and relief and joy, all compressed into a single moment. I stood, quietly left the room, gave them privacy. Father and son, reunited on the other side of death. Vincent followed me out. "Tomorrow night," I said, "the meeting with my family. I want everything ready, all the evidence, all the witnesses. I want to bury them so deep they'll never see daylight again." "It will be done." Vincent paused. "Dr. Thorne, what you did in there, saving Alaric, it was extraordinary. It was my job." "No," he met my eyes. "It was more than that. You didn't just save his life, you saved his father's sanity. You saved this family's future. You performed a miracle." I thought about that, about miracles, about the baby growing inside me, about the life I'd thought was impossible. "Maybe," I said quietly, "or maybe I'm just too stubborn to let death win." The formal parlour of Ashenmore Manor had witnessed 3 centuries of history. Peace treaties signed on that mahogany table, marriage contracts sealed before that fireplace, death sentences pronounced in those leather chairs. The walls remembered everything. Tonight, they would remember justice. My father arrived first. Desmond Thorne, 68 years old, looking 90. The tremor in his hands wasn't from age. It was from withdrawal, from fear, from the crushing weight of choices that had led him here, to this moment, begging for mercy from the daughter he'd sold. He wore the same suit from the night he'd signed the contract. It didn't fit as well. He'd lost weight, or maybe shame just made everything hang differently. "Isabeau," his voice cracked on my name. "Please, we need to talk. There's been a terrible misunderstanding." I stood by the window, Constantine beside me, Vincent by the door, 3 vampire guards in the shadows, silent, waiting. "No misunderstanding, Dad. You sold me for $2.1 million to clear gambling debts with men who would have broken your fingers. That part's crystal clear. I didn't have a choice. You had choices. You chose bourbon over sobriety. You chose gambling over responsibility. You chose Vivian over Mom, over me, over every single person who ever loved you. So no, Dad, You don't get to claim you had no choice. Vivian entered next. White dress, always white, the color of brides and angels and lies. She moved like a woman who'd never doubted her place in the world, like someone who believed beauty and manipulation could solve any problem. "Isabeau, darling," she air-kissed near my cheek. I didn't move, didn't lean in, didn't give her the satisfaction. "You look well, healthy. I'm so glad Lord Ashenmore has been taking care of you." "Is that what we're calling it?" I kept my voice level, clinical, the tone I used with difficult patients. "Taking care of me? Of course. This whole situation has been blown out of proportion. Your father was trying to help you. We all were. You're 42, unmarried, with no prospects. This arrangement gave you security, a home, purpose. I had a home. I had purpose. I'm a neurosurgeon. I save lives. You had an apartment and a job that was killing you." Vivian settled into a chair like she owned it, like she owned everything. 18-hour shifts, no social life, no future. "We gave you an opportunity." The lawyers arrived, 3 of them, grey suits, briefcases, expressions that suggested they charged by the minute and made partner by burying ethics in billable hours. The lead attorney introduced himself, Charles Whitmore, Harvard Law, specialized in contract disputes and family court, exactly the kind of shark Vivian would hire. "Lord Ashenmore." Whitmore extended his hand. Constantine didn't take it. "We represent the Thorne family in this matter. We believe there's been a significant breach of contract, material misrepresentation that voids the original agreement." "Explain." Constantine's voice was winter itself. "The contract specified that Dr. Isabeau Thorne was infertile, unable to bear children. This was documented by Dr. Octavia Marlowe and certified by medical examination. However, we have evidence that Dr. Thorne is currently pregnant. This suggests either fraud on the part of the Thorne family, who knowingly misrepresented her condition, or fraud on your part, Lord Ashenmore, who has somehow manipulated her biology through means we're prepared to investigate thoroughly." "You're accusing me of fraud?" I stepped forward. "You want to talk about fraud? Let's talk about fraud." Clarissa burst through the door, phone out, already filming. "Sorry I'm late, fam. Traffic was insane. But we're here now and about to expose this whole kidnapping situation. Make sure you guys are subscribed because this content is going to be absolutely wild." She was performing. Every word, every gesture, calculated for maximum engagement, for likes, for shares, for the algorithm that fed her ego and her bank account. "Clarissa." I looked directly at her camera. "Turn that off. Now. Freedom of the press, sis. You can't censor the truth." Vincent moved, not fast, not threatening, just moved, placed himself between Clarissa and the room, extended his hand. "The phone, Miss Thorne. This is a private meeting. Recording is not permitted." "You can't." "I can." His voice carried finality. "And I will. You have 3 seconds to comply. After that, I remove the phone, and possibly the hand holding it." Clarissa looked to her mother, to the lawyers, found no support, reluctantly handed over the phone. "You'll hear from my lawyers about this," she muttered. "You'll be hearing from many people soon," Vincent said quietly. "I suspect lawyers will be the least of your concerns." Whitmore cleared his throat, attempted to reassert control. "As I was saying, the pregnancy invalidates the contract. We're prepared to offer a settlement. Lord Ashenmore returns Dr. Thorne to her family, pays the remaining 2.1 million, and we agree not to pursue criminal charges for kidnapping, fraud, and whatever supernatural manipulation has occurred here." "Supernatural manipulation?" Constantine's laugh was cold. "Is that the legal term you're using? That should be fascinating to argue in court." "We have medical experts prepared to testify. We have documentation. We have—" "You have nothing." I opened the folder Vincent had prepared. "But I have everything. So why don't we stop pretending this is about contract law? Let's talk about what this is really about. Money, murder, and 16 years of systematic poisoning." The room went silent. Desmond's face drained of color. Vivian's carefully composed expression cracked, just slightly, just enough. "I don't know what you're talking about," Vivian said, but her voice had lost its confidence. You're clearly emotional, hormonal. Pregnancy does strange things to a woman's mind. Does it? I laid out the first document. This is my medical file from Johns Hopkins, from the surgery 16 years ago, the one that supposedly left me infertile. Look at the preoperative scans. Do you see any ruptured cysts? Any emergency damage? Any justification for a partial hysterectomy? Whitmore picked up the file, scanned it. His expression shifted, calculation replacing confidence. This could be doctored, he said, but he didn't sound convinced. It could be, except I have the original files, verified by 3 independent medical examiners, certified by the hospital, and corroborated by this. I laid out the second document. Power of attorney, signed by Vivian Thorne 3 days before my collapse, giving her medical decision-making authority, allowing her to authorize unnecessary surgical procedures. I was trying to help you, Vivian protested. You were in pain. Dr. Marlowe said surgery was necessary. Dr. Marlowe lied. Third document, bank statements. These show monthly transfers, $4,000, from a shell company owned by Vivian to an account owned by Dr. Octavia Marlowe. 16 years of payments, $768,000 total. For what, Vivian? What were you paying her for? Medical consultations, ongoing care. There's nothing improper about. Ongoing poisoning. I laid out the toxicology reports. I had my blood tested 3 weeks ago by a facility that specializes in detecting historic exposure to toxins. They found arsenic, trace amounts, residual deposits in my bone marrow from years of low-dose exposure. The same arsenic that caused my abdominal pain. That created the cysts. That gave Octavia an excuse to mutilate me. Desmond stood up. No, Vivian wouldn't. She couldn't. Sit down, Dad, I'm not finished. I pulled out more documents. This is Mom's death certificate. Cause of death, complications from ovarian cancer, signed by Dr. Octavia Marlowe. No autopsy performed, no questions asked. Except, Mom didn't die of cancer, did she, Vivian? Your mother was sick. I cared for her. I helped your father through... You killed her. The words rang through the parlor like gunshots. You poisoned her with arsenic, made it look like cancer, married my father 3 months later, and then you started poisoning me, slowly, carefully, for 16 years, long enough to ensure permanent damage, long enough to steal my inheritance. I laid out the trust documents. Mom's estate, $20 million, split equally between me and any other children Dad might have, but only if I was capable of producing heirs. If I was infertile, my share reverted to the estate. To Clarissa, you destroyed my body to steal my birthright. Clarissa stared at her mother. Mom, is this true? Vivian's composure finally shattered. You don't understand. I did what I had to do. Marguerite was going to divorce your father, take everything, leave us with nothing. And you, Isabeau, you were going to marry rich, have children. Clarissa would have gotten nothing. I was protecting my daughter. That's what mothers do. Mothers don't murder, I said quietly. Monsters do. Whitmore was already backing toward the door. I'm not a criminal attorney. This is outside my scope. I'm withdrawing from representation, effective immediately. The other 2 lawyers followed. Rats abandoning ship, running before the water got too deep. Desmond sat frozen, staring at Vivian like he'd never seen her before. You killed Marguerite? You killed my wife? Your ex-wife. Vivian's mask was gone. What remained was desperation and venom. She was going to take everything. You were broke, drowning in debt. I saved you. I gave you a life. I gave you a daughter. Everything I did was for this family. You're not family. I gathered the documents, placed them back in the folder. You're a cancer, and tonight, you're getting cut out. The doors opened. New Orleans Police Department, 6 officers, led by a woman in a dark suit. Detective Margaret Riley, Homicide Division. 45 years old, 20 years on the force. The kind of cop who'd seen everything and still believed in justice. Vivian Thorne? Riley's voice was professional, detached. You're under arrest for the murder of Marguerite Thorne and the attempted murder of Dr. Isabeau Thorne. You have the right to remain silent." Vivian lunged at me, claws out, literally, nails aimed at my face, at my stomach, at the baby she wanted to erase. She never made it. Constantine moved faster than human eyes could track. One moment he was beside me, the next he had Vivian by the wrist, holding her arms suspended in the air, his grip absolute. "Touch my wife," he said softly. "Touch my child, and I will forget that I've spent 680 years learning restraint. I will forget civilization. I will forget mercy. Do you understand me?" Vivian whimpered. Her wrist was already bruising, already breaking under the pressure of his grip. He released her. She collapsed. Riley's officers moved in, cuffed her, read her rights over her screaming. "This is insane! I'm the victim here. He's a monster. He's brainwashed her. He's—" "Ma'am," Riley's tone was glacial. "We have 17 witnesses prepared to testify. We have medical evidence, financial records, signed confessions from Dr. Octavia Marlowe. You have the right to remain silent. I strongly suggest you exercise it." They dragged Vivian out, still screaming, still performing, still believing that if she made enough noise, created enough drama, someone would believe her. No one did. Desmond stood, aged 20 years in 20 minutes. "Isabeau, I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't know what she'd done to your mother. To you. I thought—" "You thought nothing." I looked at him. This man who'd raised me, this stranger who'd sold me. "You drank and gambled and let Vivienne pull your strings. You're not a murderer, Dad, but you're an accomplice to all of it, and you'll answer for that." "What do you want from me?" His voice broke. "What can I possibly do to make this right?" "Nothing. There's nothing you can do. But the law will do something. You'll testify against Vivian. You'll tell the truth about everything. And then you'll serve whatever sentence they give you for fraud, for selling your daughter, for being too weak to protect the people who loved you." Riley turned to Desmond. "Mr. Thorne, you're not under arrest, yet. But you're not leaving New Orleans. We'll be in touch." He nodded, defeated, broken. He looked at me one last time, searching for forgiveness, for understanding, for something I couldn't give him. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "So am I, Dad. So am I." He left, escorted by officers, not in cuffs, not yet, but not free. Clarissa remained, for once without her phone, without her performance. Just a 38-year-old woman realizing her entire life had been built on murder and lie. "I didn't know," she said. "About Mom, about the poisoning, I didn't know." "But you benefited." I kept my voice neutral. "You lived well, spent money that should have been mine, money that came from my mother's death, from my mutilation. Ignorance doesn't make you innocent, Clarissa. It just makes you complicit. What's going to happen to me? That depends on what you do next. You can testify against Vivian, tell the truth about everything you saw, everything you knew, or you can stay silent. Protect the woman who murdered for you. Your choice." She looked at the door where Vivian had disappeared, at the mother who destroyed lives to secure her future. "I'll testify," she said quietly. "I'll tell them everything." She left, smaller somehow, diminished, the camera-ready confidence gone, just a woman facing the truth of what her life had cost. And then there were three, me, Constantine, and Vincent. "It's done," I said, feeling hollowed out, empty. "Vivian will go to prison. Dad will probably follow. Justice served." "Not yet." Vincent's expression was grave. "There's one more, the architect of this entire scheme, the man who knew about the murders and used them for leverage, the man who's been poisoning Alaric for 8 years, Silas Grimwood." As if summoned by his name, the study door opened. Silas entered, 280 years old, distinguished, silver hair, expensive suit, the perfect image of a trusted advisor. Behind him, 40 figures, vampire soldiers, old, battle-hardened, loyal to Silas, not to Constantine. "My lord," Silas's voice was silk, "I'm afraid we have a problem, a succession problem." Constantine's posture shifted, combat ready. "Silas, I thought you'd run. disappeared into whatever hole you've been planning for centuries. Run? Silas smiled. Why would I run? I've invested 280 years into this family, into this estate. I'm not abandoning my investment now.
Your investment ended the moment Isabeau became pregnant, the moment she gave me an heir. Your inheritance claim is void.
Only if she lives long enough to deliver. Silas gestured. The vampire soldiers moved, surrounding us, cutting off exits. Tragic things happen in childbirth, especially with hybrid pregnancies. So dangerous, so unpredictable. Even the finest surgeon can't save everyone. The threat was clear, undisguised. He was going to kill me, kill the baby.
Return Constantine to despair and eventual suicide.
You poisoned Alaric. Constantine's voice was death. You poisoned my son, watched him suffer for 8 years, made me watch him die by inches. All for money. All for justice. Silas's composure cracked, revealing rage beneath. I served you for 280 years, fought your wars, managed your wealth, sacrificed my own ambitions for your glory. And what did I receive? A salary, a pension, a pat on the head like a good dog.
While you lived in luxury, while you played at being king, I earned that inheritance. I earned the right to rule when you're gone.
You earned nothing. Constantine moved toward him. You betrayed everything, everyone, for $800 million. Small price for a lifetime of servitude. Silas drew a blade, silver, long, wicked. I'm taking what's mine, starting with your heir. He lunged, not at Constantine, at me. Silver blade aimed at my stomach, at the baby, at the future he wanted to erase. He never made it. I'd been a combat surgeon in Iraq. I'd worked in field hospitals under fire. I'd learned to anticipate, to react, to survive. My hand moved to my jacket, to the syringe I prepared, just in case. Just because 16 years of neurosurgery had taught me to always have a backup plan. Silver nitrate, liquid silver, 30 cubic centimeters, enough to kill a vampire if injected directly into the bloodstream. I jammed it into Silas's throat, depressed the plunger, watched his eyes go wide, watched understanding dawn. You, he staggered. The blade clattered from his hand. You poisoned me. No, I stepped back. I treated you, with the same medicine you gave Alaric. 8 years of silver poisoning compressed into 30 seconds. How does it feel, Silas, to burn from the inside out? He collapsed, screaming, clawing at his throat, at the fire spreading through his veins, killing him with the same weapon he'd used on others.
The vampire soldiers hesitated, looked at each other, calculating, deciding.
Constantine didn't give them time to choose. You have 10 seconds to leave, he said. His voice carried absolute authority, 680 years of command. Abandon Silas, abandon this coup, or die with him. Choose. They chose. 40 vampires melting into shadows, disappearing. Survival instinct overriding loyalty to a traitor. Silas lay on the floor, still alive, still conscious, but fading. The silver burning through his heart, his brain, his centuries of accumulated existence. Constantine knelt beside him. You were my friend, my advisor, my brother in everything but blood. I would have given you anything. All you had to do was ask. All you had to do was remain loyal. Loyalty. Silas coughed. Black blood. Loyalty is for dogs and fools. I was neither. No, Constantine stood. You were worse. You were a coward. Too afraid to build your own legacy. Too weak to earn power honestly. You hid behind my name, my strength, my family. And when that wasn't enough, you tried to destroy us. He looked at me, at the syringe still in my hand. Finish it, he said. He doesn't deserve a slow death. He deserves nothing. But give him mercy anyway, because that's what separates us from him. I knelt, looked into Silas's eyes, saw the fear there, the regret. Too late. Always too late. This is for Alaric, I said quietly, for every day you made him suffer. I injected the rest of the silver directly into his heart. watched the light fade from his eyes, watched 280 years of treachery end in silence. When it was over, I stood, dropped the syringe. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline, from the crash that comes after battle. Constantine caught me before I fell, held me against his chest, cold, steady, alive. "You saved me," he whispered. "You saved us all."
"Oh, we saved each other," I corrected. "That's what family does."
3 months later, I stood in a courthouse in New Orleans. Federal courthouse. High ceilings, marble floors, the weight of law and order pressing down from every surface. Vivian Thorne sat at the defendant's table, prison orange instead of white, hair unwashed, face bare of makeup, finally showing her true age, her true nature. The jury had deliberated for 40 minutes. 40 minutes to decide the fate of a woman who'd murdered for money, poisoned for inheritance, destroyed lives without remorse. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" Judge Roberts asked. 65 years old, Korean War veteran, the kind of judge who'd seen real evil and wasn't impressed by tears or manipulation. "We have, Your Honor." The foreman stood. "On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Marguerite Thorne, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of attempted murder of Dr.
Isabeau Thorne,
we find the defendant guilty. On 17 counts of fraud, theft, and conspiracy, we find the defendant guilty." Vivian didn't react, didn't cry, didn't perform. She just sat, empty, defeated, erased. "Sentencing will be held in 30 days, Roberts said. "But given the severity of these crimes, the premeditated nature, the calculated cruelty spanning 16 years, I'm inclined to recommend life imprisonment without possibility of parole." Life. For Vivian, who'd valued life so cheaply, who'd traded lives for money like they were commodities. Poetic. Perfect. Justice. I left the courthouse. Constantine waited outside, Alaric beside him, healed, healthy, moving with the fluid grace of a vampire who'd been given his life back. "How do you feel?" Constantine asked, his hand finding mine, always cold, always steady. "Tired," I leaned against him. "Empty, like I've been fighting for so long I forgot what peace feels like."
"Well then let's go home," he said.
"Let's remember." 5 years later. The morning sun filtered through Spanish moss, turning the bayou golden. Serafina ran through the garden, 5 years old, dark hair flying, eyes the impossible violet of vampire royalty. She wasn't running normally, she was faster, stronger, already showing the hybrid abilities that made her unique in all the world. She cleared a 4-foot hedge without breaking stride, landed softly, laughed. "Mama, watch!" She held up her hand, a small cut on her palm. As I watched, it healed, skin knitting together, flesh reforming. No scar, no evidence it had ever existed. "I see, baby," I smiled. "You're getting so strong." "Like Papa." She ran to Constantine. He scooped her up, spun her around. This 680-year-old vampire warrior playing with his daughter like any suburban father on a Saturday morning. Alaric emerged from the manor, carrying coffee for me, blood for himself. He moved perfectly now. No tremor, no hesitation. The silver poisoning erased by 11 hours of surgery and the stubborn determination of a surgeon who refused to let death win. "Any word from Desmond?" he asked. Sitting beside me on the stone bench that overlooked the gardens. "Letter yesterday." I sipped the coffee. "He's serving 5 years for fraud. Testifying against Vivian got him a reduced sentence. He says he's sober, in therapy, trying to understand how he became what he became."
"Do you believe him?"
"I don't know." I watched Serafina chase butterflies. I want to, but belief requires trust, and trust requires evidence. Time will tell. And Clarissa. Witness protection, new name, new city, new life. She testified, told the truth. The prosecutor used her testimony to seal Vivian's conviction. In exchange, she walks free. No charges for her role in spending the blood money.
Does that bother you, that she gets a second chance after everything?
I thought about that, about justice versus vengeance, about punishment versus redemption. No, I said finally. She was a child when most of it happened. Vivian's victim as much as her accomplice. She's living with the knowledge that her entire life was built on murder. That's punishment enough. Constantine joined us, Serafina on his shoulders. Isabeau, there's someone here to see you. At the gate, says it's important. I walked to the front of the estate. A woman stood at the iron gates, 55 years old, greying hair, familiar somehow. It took me a moment to place her. Dr. Octavia Marlowe. She'd aged 20 years in 5. Prison did that. Guilt did that. Facing what you'd done and who you'd become did that. Dr. Thorne. Her voice was hoarse, broken. I know I have no right to ask, no right to even speak to you, but I needed to see you, needed to try to explain.
Well, there's nothing to explain. I kept my distance.
You mutilated me for money. You helped murder my mother. You chose greed over your Hippocratic oath. What explanation makes that acceptable? None. Tears ran down her face, real tears, not performance, not manipulation. None at all. I was weak. Vivian had leverage, photos from medical school, a malpractice case she helped cover up. She owned me. And instead of being brave, instead of facing consequences, I destroyed you. She pulled out an envelope, old, worn, creased from years of handling. This is from your mother, from Marguerite. She gave it to me 3 days before she died, made me promise to give it to you if anything happened to her. I kept it all these years, too afraid to deliver it, too ashamed to face what it meant. She slid the envelope through the gate bars. I served 3 years. I'll serve 7 more for what I did. It's not enough. It will never be enough. But I wanted you to have this. Wanted you to know your mother suspected. Wanted you to understand she tried to protect you even at the end. Octavia turned, walked away. Back to whatever transport had brought her. Back to prison. Back to living with choices that could never be unmade. I picked up the envelope. Marguerite Thorne, written in my mother's handwriting. Elegant, precise. The same hand that had signed permission slips and birthday cards and college recommendation letters. I opened it. My darling Isabeau, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And if Octavia finally found the courage to deliver it, that means you've discovered the truth about Vivian. About what she is, what she's done. I suspected for months. The sickness, the pain. The way it came and went with suspicious timing. I had my blood tested privately. Found the arsenic. Found the evidence. I was going to divorce your father. Take you away. Protect you from her. But I waited too long. Tried to gather more proof. Tried to build an unassailable case. She moved first. I'm writing this in the hospital. Feeling the poison winning. Feeling time running out. Octavia is here. I gave her an ultimatum. Deliver this letter or I expose her malpractice to the medical board. She chose silence. She always does. But you, my brave girl, you deserve the truth. You deserve to know that your mother fought, that she tried, that she loved you more than life itself. I have a trust fund, $20 million. Hidden accounts Vivian doesn't know about. The details are with my attorney, James Richardson. He's been instructed to release the information on your 40th birthday. Old enough to protect yourself, wise enough to use it well. Take that money. Build a life Vivian can't touch. Find happiness she can't poison. Live fully in ways she can't control. And know this, you are not broken. You are not damaged. You are my daughter, my miracle, my greatest achievement. Whatever lies they tell you, whatever poison they feed you, remember that. Be brave, Isabeau. Be more than they expect. Be everything I know you can be. All my love, forever and always. Mom. I read it twice, 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Constantine appeared beside me, read over my shoulder, his arm around my waist, supporting me, holding me together. She knew, I whispered. She tried to save me. She did save you, Constantine said gently. She gave you the truth, the money, the proof that you were loved. That's everything, Isabeau.
That's the foundation on which you rebuilt yourself. I folded the letter, carefully, reverently, placed it in my pocket. I need to call James Richardson, I said. Find out about the trust fund. Make sure it's transferred to Serafina. Blood money from my mother's death. It should fund her life, her future, turn poison into something clean. Whatever you want, Constantine kissed my temple. Whatever you need.
6 months after that, I stood in what had once been a surgical suite and was now a medical research facility. State-of-the-art, funded by my mother's trust, dedicated to studying hybrid biology, vampire-human genetics, the medical implications of everything we'd learned. Alaric worked beside me. We'd become partners, surgeon and patient turned colleagues, turned friends. He had insights into vampire physiology I couldn't match. I had human medical training he couldn't replicate. Together, we were mapping new territory, making discoveries that would change everything. Look at this, he pointed to a scan. Serafina's brain, hybrid neurology. The neural pathways are evolving, adapting. She's developing abilities we didn't predict. Enhanced empathy, emotional resonance. She can feel what people around her feel. Not telepathy exactly, more like hypersensitive emotional awareness. Is that dangerous? I studied the images. My daughter's impossibly beautiful brain. Maybe. Or maybe it's the next step in evolution, the bridge between our species, the thing that makes peace possible. I thought about that. About Serafina growing up in a world that didn't understand her, didn't have a place for her. About the responsibility of raising something new, something unprecedented. We'll protect her, I said. Teach her. Help her navigate this. That's what parents do. That's what good parents do, Alaric corrected. The ones who destroyed you and your mother, they were parents too. But they chose greed over love, power over protection. You're different. You chose sacrifice. That makes all the difference. That evening I stood in the tower room where this had all begun, where Constantine had offered me healing, where I'd chosen to risk everything for the possibility of wholeness. The surgical knife I'd used to kill Silas hung on the wall now, not as decoration, as reminder, mounted in a glass case with a brass plaque. Dr. Isabeau Thorne, combat surgeon, healer, mother, the woman who saved us all. Constantine had commissioned it. I'd protested. It felt too much, too dramatic, too heavy. It's truth, he'd said. You walked into hell armed with a scalpel and determination. You cut out the cancer in my family, in yourself. That deserves to be remembered. Now I stood before it, thinking about everything that knife represented, every choice, every sacrifice, every moment of courage when surrender would have been easier. Serafina tugged my hand. Mama, why is your knife on the wall? How do you explain to a 5-year-old about murder and justice and the thin line between the two? Because sometimes, I said carefully, the tools we use to save people can also protect them. That knife helped me save Uncle Alaric, and it helped me protect you before you were born. It reminds me that healing and fighting aren't opposites. Sometimes they're the same thing. When I grow up, Serafina said seriously, I want to be like you. I want to help people. You will, baby. I promise you will. Constantine appeared in the doorway. Dinner's ready. Alaric made his famous cassoulet, claims it's a recipe from 1789. I suspect he's lying, but it smells incredible. We walked downstairs together. Family. Not the one I was born into. Not the one bound by blood and betrayal. The one I chose. The one I fought for. The one I built from ashes and determination and stubborn refusal to let evil win. Dinner was loud, warm, full of laughter and stories and the easy comfort of people who'd survived hell together and come out stronger. Later, after Serafina was asleep, after Alaric had retreated to his wing of the manor, Constantine and I stood on the balcony, looking out over the bayou, over the impossibly beautiful wilderness that had become home. Do you regret it? He asked. Any of it? Your father selling you, the bonding, the pregnancy, the war, any of it? I thought about my life before, the apartment, the endless shifts, the loneliness,
the broken feeling that had defined me for 16 years. And I thought about my life now. Serafina laughing, Alaric healing, research that would change the world, love that had transformed me from the inside out. No, I said, not a single moment. They tried to break me. They tried to discard me. They sold me for half price because they thought I was worthless. But they were wrong. I wasn't worthless. I was priceless. I just needed someone who could see it. I saw it the moment you walked in, Constantine said. Exhausted, angry, wearing scrubs stained with coffee and 16 years of pain. I looked at you and thought, this woman survived war. She'll survive anything. I was right. We survived together. I laced my fingers through his, cold and warm, human and vampire, different and complementary. That's the secret, isn't it? We don't survive alone, we survive together. We fight together, we heal together, we build together. He pulled me close, kissed me slowly, thoroughly. The kiss of a man who'd lived 680 years and finally found home. I love you, he whispered. For nearly 7 centuries I wandered. For nearly 7 centuries I searched. And then a coward sold me his daughter for $2.1 million. Best investment I ever made. I laughed. Worst sale he ever made. His loss, my gain, our future. 5 years after the war ended, the surgical knife hangs in Ashenmore Hall. No longer a weapon of desperate defense, but a reminder. Isabeau learned that honor isn't measured by the price others place on you, but by the value you refuse to surrender. That sometimes the daughter they sell for half price becomes the woman who saves them all. And Constantine learned that in his 680 years, legacy isn't built on immortality, but on choosing to love mortals brave enough to transform poison into medicine. That sometimes the monster they fear becomes the father who kneels before courage, because you can't destroy what refuses to die. You can't poison what transmutes venom into cure. You can't sell what knows its worth. The Thorne family tried all three. They failed at all three. Vinian rots in federal prison, serving life without parole for murdering the woman whose husband she stole and poisoning the daughter whose inheritance she coveted. $20 million sat untouched while she destroyed lives for table scraps. Desmond Thorne completed his 5-year sentence. He lives in a modest apartment in Baton Rouge now, sober, attending meetings, writing letters his daughter sometimes reads but never answers. He understands. Some debts take more than money to repay. Clarissa changed her name to Rebecca Walsh. She works at a non-profit in Portland. No social media, no cameras, no performance. Just quiet work helping other victims of family fraud. Redemption, she learned, isn't about forgiveness. It's about becoming someone who deserves it. And Dr. Octavia Marlowe serves her 10-year sentence in the same facility as Vivian. They don't speak. They never will. 2 women who chose money over medicine, watching through bars as the woman they tried to destroy builds miracles. But in the gardens of Ashenmore Manor, a different story blooms. Serafina Ashenmore, age 5, can heal wounds with her blood, can sense emotions before they're spoken, can run faster than human eyes can track, and lift weights that would crush grown men. She is the bridge, the hope, the proof that love transcends species. And her mother, Dr. Isabeau Thorne Ashenmore, runs the world's first hybrid medical research center, publishing papers, training doctors, saving lives with knowledge earned through suffering. Every surgery she performs, every student she trains, every hybrid child she delivers healthy into this world. That's the revenge. Not prison, not punishment, not watching enemies fall. The revenge is living, is thriving, is becoming so much more than they ever expected. Her father sold her for $2.1 million, calling her defective. Today, her research has saved lives worth billions. Her surgical techniques are taught at Harvard. Her hybrid genetics research won the Lasker Award, and her daughter will outlive empires. They tried to sell her cheap. They priced her wrong. So if you were Desmond, standing at that desk 16 years ago, drowning in debt and bourbon, would you choose differently? Would you fight for your daughter or sell her to save yourself? Comment below.
tell me what you'd do. Because that choice, that single moment of cowardice or courage, defines everything that follows. And remember, subscribe for next week's story. We're telling Alaric's tale, the 180-year-old vampire who fell in love with the nurse who saved his life, who learned that sometimes the person you're supposed to heal ends up healing you. Because the best stories aren't about heroes and villains, they're about humans and monsters discovering they're not that different, about choosing courage when cowardice is easier, about refusing to stay broken when the world insists you should be. They sold her for scraps. She bought her freedom with scalpels and determination. And that's the lesson. You're never as worthless as the people who discarded you believe. You're never as broken as the people who hurt you claim. You're never as finished as your circumstances suggest. You're just getting started.